Far away, in the endless ocean of space, something unusual was moving towards our solar system. It was not big enough to be a planet, not bright enough to be a star, and not slow enough to be called an ordinary comet. It was fast, silent, and strange. This strange traveler would later be named 3, but on the first day of its discovery, it was only a dot of light on a screen, a small signal in the darkness. The story begins in an observatory, where scientists were scanning the sky as they did every night. Their computers recorded millions of stars, countless dots of light, and ordinary space rocks. But then, one line of data looked different. Something was moving. Something was cutting through the background of stars in a way that did not make sense. The computer alarm beeped. The astronomer leaned closer, and for the first time, human eyes noticed the strange guest from another world. At first, the discovery looked simple. Another asteroid, another icy rock traveling in the void. But the speed of this object was unusual. It was moving too fast, much faster than the objects usually tied to the sun's gravity. Most asteroids and comets circle the sun in predictable orbits, but this one did not seem interested in circling. It was passing through, almost like a visitor, with no plan to stay. The scientists checked again. They measured the light, they measured the angle, and they measured the path. The numbers refused to fit into the usual equations. The astronomer whispered to his colleague, "This one is not from here." And with those words, the mystery of 3IATLAS began. When news of the discovery spread, telescopes across the world turned their eyes towards the object. From Hawaii to Chile, from Europe to space-based observatories, all focused on the same strange visitor. What they saw deepened the mystery. The shape was not clear. It did not look round like a planet or smooth like a comet's icy core. Instead, its light curve suggested something long, stretched and flat. Some scientists compared it to a cigar, others to a pancake, but no one could agree. The object reflected sunlight in unusual ways. At times it flashed brighter, then dimmed again, almost like it was spinning with uneven surfaces. Every rotation told a different story, but no story matched the rules of natural rocks. People began to ask, what exactly is this thing? Days turned into weeks, and the object came closer, still silent, still fast, still ignoring the sun's call to pull it into orbit. Its path was not bound to us. It was only crossing, like a stranger walking across a crowded street without stopping. The scientists gave it a name, 3IATLAS. 3 meant it was the third known interstellar object, something that came from beyond our solar system. Atlas came from the telescope system that first noticed it, but the name was only a label. The truth of its nature remained hidden. Reporters caught the story. Articles spoke of a messenger from another star. Headlines screamed of a possible alien probe. The public was divided. Some were excited, some were afraid, and some laughed at the idea. But the scientists could not laugh. The data was too strange, and the universe was too mysterious. As the object entered deeper into the solar system, it began to behave in ways no one could predict. Its speed changed slightly, almost as if some hidden engine pushed it. Asteroids do not do this. Comets do not do this. Gravity pulls them. Sunlight warms them. But nothing makes them accelerate without reason. Yet 3I Atlas did. the observers wrote in their reports. It shows non-gravitational acceleration in simple words. It was moving as if guided. The possibility that it was natural still existed. Some said maybe gas was escaping from it, like a comet releasing ice vapor, but no visible tail appeared. Others said maybe its shape made sunlight push it like a sail. But again, the math did not fit neatly. Every answer opened more questions, and every question made the object more mysterious for the people watching from Earth. It felt like standing at the edge of a deep forest and seeing a shadow moving between trees. You know something is there, but you cannot describe it fully. And when you look closer, the shadow disappears, leaving only more confusion. Night after night, telescopes kept recording. Each new image gave scientists more data, but instead of clarity, the data gave contradictions. One group said, "It is a comet." Another group said, "No, it is an asteroid." And another whispered, "Maybe it is something else, something not natural." The debate grew louder, but the object kept moving silently, uncaring about human arguments for ordinary people. The mystery was even more fascinating. Videos appeared online, calling it a spaceship. Artists painted it as a glowing craft sliding through the stars. Some even said it was a scout, a messenger, a test from another civilization, whether true or not. The imagination of humanity was already captured, and yet the reality remained simple and haunting. A piece of matter from somewhere beyond our star had entered our home. It was the first clear traveler from interstellar space that humanity had detected. Not from our sun, not from our planets, not from our system. It came from far away, carrying secrets older than our world. As it passed near the sun, scientists hoped to learn more. They waited for a comet tail, but saw none. They waited for predictable movement, but saw changes. They waited for normal answers, but received only silence. Every telescope showed the same truth. The more they studied, the less they understood. 3-1 Atlas was like a riddle written across the sky. A riddle in a language humans could not read. A reminder that the universe is vast, and we are still learning how little we know. But in those early days, before it vanished into the distance, it brought one powerful feeling to Earth, a feeling of wonder, a feeling of mystery, a reminder that the night sky is not empty, it is alive with visitors, some known, some unknown, and sometimes those visitors pass by silently, leaving us to question our place in the cosmos. Thus, the arrival of 3I Atlas was not just the arrival of a space rock. It was the arrival of new curiosity, new fear, new imagination. It was the beginning of a story that no one could explain fully, and it was only the first chapter of a mystery that continues even today. The object now moved deeper into the solar system. Telescopes on Earth and in space followed its path night after night. Each new observation made it stranger. It was not behaving like the ordinary rocks that circle the sun. It was not shining like the icy comets that grow bright tails when heated. It was something different, something rare, and something unsettling. Scientists expected it to be familiar. They thought maybe it would look like a comet, a ball of ice with a tail of vapor, or maybe like an asteroid, a dark and solid piece of stone. But the light curve told another story. The brightness changed in sharp patterns. It did not fade smoothly. It did not rise smoothly. Instead, it flashed, dimmed, and flashed again, almost as if it had flat surfaces catching the sun like mirrors. In meeting rooms, scientists argued about the shape. Some said it looked long, like a cigar stretching hundreds of meters. Others said no, it was flat, like a pancake sliding through space. Both ideas sounded strange. No natural object had been seen with such shapes. Yet 3I Atlas refused to fit into simple categories. The more data came, the stranger it looked. One scientist compared it to a shard of broken glass. Another compared it to a sail, but no telescope could show it clearly. The distance was too great, the size too small. All they had were the patterns of light, and those patterns made the mystery grow. The media began calling it a cosmic stranger, a visitor that did not belong to our family of planets. The public loved the name. It gave life to the idea that something foreign had entered our sky, an intruder or perhaps a guest, but never ordinary, never simple as it moved. The speed still troubled astronomers. They saw it change ever so slightly, not enough to call it a spaceship, but enough to call it unusual. It seemed to resist prediction. Like water slipping through fingers, every attempt to trap it in numbers failed. The models bent, the equations broke, and the stranger kept flying silently. Some scientists stayed cautious. They said nature makes strange things too. They warned against jumping to wild conclusions. But others could not ignore the oddities. Why would a natural rock look like this? Why would it move in this way? Why would it shine in patterns for thousands of years? Humans had looked at the sky and wondered. Myths spoke of gods traveling across the heavens. Stories told of messengers in fiery chariots. Now, in the modern age of telescopes and satellites, humans again faced a mystery that sounded like legend. A messenger from far away, carrying no voice, no signal, only its presence. The stranger among stars forced humanity to ask hard questions. Was it just a piece of interstellar debris, a fragment thrown away from the birth of another solar system? Or was it something more? Was it a creation, not an accident? Was it perhaps technology so old and broken that it now looked like a rock? In quiet conversations, scientists admitted their private doubts. They wrote careful papers with safe language, but in their hearts, many felt the strangeness. One astronomer said softly, "If this is natural, it is the strangest natural thing we have ever seen." Another whispered, "If it is not natural, then someone, somewhere, sent it." Such thoughts were dangerous, but the object itself was dangerous to human certainty. It was proof that the universe still had surprises greater than our imagination. Meanwhile, the public imagination ran wild. Some drew images of alien crafts shaped like needles. Some painted flat, shining discs drifting silently. Others imagined broken relics, ancient and forgotten, passing like ghosts across the stars. No one knew the truth, but everyone felt the weight of the mystery. The object had no engines that could be seen, no windows, no structure, no glow, only a silence that was louder than sound. It was a stranger, and it passed by without explanation. Night after night, telescopes measured its rotation. At one angle, it grew bright. At another, it dimmed to almost nothing. It spun irregularly, not smooth like a planet turning, almost like a coin tossed into the air, wobbling as it fell. But this coin was spinning across the stars, and no one knew who had tossed it. The scientists gave lectures. They showed graphs of brightness. They showed models of long shapes and flat shapes. But every model left gaps. Every theory left shadows of doubt. The more they tried to explain, the more they failed to explain. Still, the excitement grew. The first clear interstellar object had come into our solar system, and it was not ordinary. It was a stranger that broke our rules, a stranger that ignored our expectations, a stranger that reminded us how small our knowledge really was. When humans call something a stranger, it means they do not fully know it, and perhaps they fear it a little. This was true for 3IATLAS. It was both fascinating and frightening, because what if it was natural? That would mean the universe can make things stranger than we thought. And what if it was not natural? That would mean someone else exists. Someone else creates. Someone else explores. The stranger kept moving. It did not slow down to explain itself. It did not send signals. It did not change its path for human curiosity. It was silent, perfect in its silence. And perhaps that was the most unsettling part. Human beings fear silence. When they ask a question, they want an answer. But 3I Atlas gave only silence, and that silence was full of possibilities. Possibilities that stretched from simple rocks to alien minds, from broken debris to secret messengers. As the object drifted past the sun and began its journey outward, astronomers knew they had limited time. It would soon be too far to faint. The stranger would leave them with only memories. So they worked harder. They pointed every telescope they could. They gathered every speck of data. But no matter how much they learned, the mystery stayed. The stranger had no voice. Yet it spoke loudly to the human mind. It said, "You do not know as much as you think," it said. "Your universe is still wild," it said. "You are still children looking at the sky with open eyes." And then it kept moving. Moving without care for our questions. Moving without care for our fears. Moving like a visitor who had no time to explain. Thus, part 2 of its story became clear. It was not just an object. It was a stranger among stars. A guest from a place humans could not see. A riddle that carried no answer. A shape that refused to be defined. A mystery that only grew deeper with each passing night. And the scientists, the dreamers, and the ordinary people on Earth could only watch. Watch and wonder. Watch and imagine. Watch and realize that in the vast ocean of stars, there are strangers, and some of them pass by silently, leaving behind not knowledge, but questions, not certainty, but wonder, not peace, but mystery. And so the stranger continued its path, a cosmic traveler, an uninvited guest, its silence heavier than any words, its shape brighter than any dream, its presence stranger than any story. And in its passing, humanity felt something ancient, the same feeling their ancestors felt when they looked up at comets and shooting stars, a mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity, a reminder that the sky is full of mysteries and that we are still learning how to see. The object called 3I Atlas was already a stranger, but what came next made it even more mysterious. Astronomers continued to track its path as it moved through the solar system. They expected it to follow the rules of gravity. Every planet, every comet, every asteroid obeys these rules. The sun pulls them. and they move along predictable curves. But 3I Atlas was different. Its movements were not normal. They were unnatural, confusing, and hard to explain. In the beginning, the object seemed to follow a path shaped by the sun's pull. It curved as expected. It slowed slightly when approaching the center. But then something strange happened. Instead of continuing in the exact way predicted by equations, it drifted off. The numbers no longer matched the real motion. The object accelerated in small ways. It was as if an invisible hand had pushed it. Scientists called it non-gravitational acceleration. It was a technical term, but it carried deep mystery. Normally, such acceleration happens when comets release gas. When ice turns into vapor, the object gets a small push. It is like a natural engine. But 3I Atlas had no tail, no visible cloud, no glowing trail of dust, nothing that explained the extra push. It was moving as if powered by something humans could not see. This troubled the scientific community. Some said it was still a comet, just a very unusual one. Maybe the gas escaping was invisible, too faint for telescopes. But others argued, if it is invisible, why does the motion not fit the usual patterns? Debates grew louder. Meetings stretched long into the night. But the stranger in the sky gave no answers. It simply kept moving in its own way. In history, humans had faced many mysteries. They had seen eclipses and feared the gods. They had watched meteors and imagined signs from heaven. Now, in the age of space science, they faced a new mystery, one that felt modern but also ancient. The same fear and awe filled their minds, because once again the sky was doing something unexpected. Some scientists began to think carefully. What if sunlight itself was pushing the object? If it was flat, like a sail, then light pressure might act on it. This idea was bold. It suggested the object could be thin and wide, perhaps thinner than paper. And if that was true, then maybe it was not natural at all. Maybe it was a light sail, a piece of technology built by someone else. The possibility shocked many. It turned quiet discussions into heated debates. One astronomer said, "We must stay cautious. We must not jump to wild guesses." But another replied, "The data is already wild. We are only following the evidence." The idea of alien technology spread quickly. Media outlets loved it. Articles asked, "Is this an alien probe?" TV channels called it a messenger from another civilization. The public imagination exploded. Some were afraid, some were thrilled, but no one was indifferent. And yet, the object itself did not care. It continued its silent flight. It accelerated just enough to remain mysterious. Not too fast, not too slow, just enough to escape full explanation, as if teasing the humans watching from Earth. The unnatural movement was like a whisper. It said, "You do not know me," it said. "Your rules are not enough for me." And still, it offered no more. No signal, no sound, only motion. In the world of science, natural explanations are always preferred. But the truth is, natural or not, this object was teaching humility. It reminded humans that their equations are small, their knowledge limited, their universe bigger than they think. Astronomers calculated again and again. They added data from Hawaii, Chile, Spain, and space telescopes. Every result showed the same strange push, not random, but not fully natural either. The stranger was breaking the silence of numbers. It was showing that sometimes The universe behaves in ways we cannot fit into neat boxes. Some people imagined it as a broken craft, drifting slowly, powered only by the leftover design of its creators. Others imagined it as a living rock, something beyond human biology, a form of existence that does not match our ideas of life. Still others thought it was only a rock, but a rock so strange that it became almost alien in its difference. Each idea was a mirror of human hopes and fears. Each one was possible, but none could be proven. The mystery deepened when scientists compared it with other known objects. No asteroid in history had shown such movement. No comet had hidden its tail so perfectly. Nothing in our catalog matched this visitor. It was unique. It was alone. It was the first of its kind to enter human awareness. The public followed every update. News headlines spoke of a rock that moves like it has a mind. Social media filled with questions. What if it was a probe watching us? What if it was a message? What if it was only a fragment from a distant star? Every theory found an audience. Every idea found a believer. But in observatories, the mood was heavier for scientists. This was not just a game of imagination. This was real data, real physics, real confusion. They knew they might never see another like it in their lifetimes. They knew time was running out. Because the object was moving away, each day it grew fainter. Each night, harder to see, the stranger was leaving, taking its secrets with it. The unnatural movements were the final gift, a puzzle left behind for humans to struggle with, a reminder that the universe is not a closed book. It is a library with endless unread pages. Some pages show beauty, some show terror, some show both. And this object was one of those pages. In the end, the question remained: was it natural, or was it not? Was it a rock shaped by chance, or a sail shaped by design? Was it debris, or was it a messenger? No one could answer. And perhaps that was the most important lesson. The universe does not always give answers. Sometimes it only gives mysteries. And those mysteries are what keep humans searching. The unnatural movements of 3I Atlas were not just about physics. They were about human imagination. They were about curiosity. They were about the deep need to know, and perhaps the deeper truth that some things are not meant to be fully known, at least not yet, as it continued its journey outward, away from the planets, away from the sun. Its path remained strange, its story unfinished. But one thing was certain: it had already changed how humans see the universe. It had already broken the comfort of normal rules. It had already whispered that there is more out there, more than rocks, more than stars, more than what we can name. Thus, Part 3 became the story of motion. Motion that was not natural. Motion that was not ordinary. Motion that made humans doubt their own knowledge. The stranger did not speak, but it moved, and in its movements, it wrote a story across the stars, a story humans are still trying to read. The object called 3I Atlas had already challenged human understanding. It looked strange, it moved strangely, and it refused to fit into any simple category. But as the data spread through the scientific world, another struggle began. It was not only a struggle with the object itself, but also a struggle among humans. Theories rose, arguments grew, and conflicts between ideas became louder. In every age of science, mystery brings debate. Some voices call for caution. Others call for boldness. Some hold tight to familiar explanations, while others reach for new possibilities. 31ATLAS forced this pattern once again. It created a battlefield of ideas where scientists, writers, dreamers, and the public all had something to say. The first theory was simple. It must be a comet. Comets sometimes behave strangely, and they sometimes surprise observers. If 3I Atlas was a comet, then perhaps its acceleration was due to invisible gas. Gas escaping in a direction humans could not see. This explanation was safe, comfortable, and natural, but it was not enough. Because even the faintest comet usually shows some signs. A haze, a tail, or at least a trace of dust. This object had nothing. It was bare, silent, and clean. The comet theory gave comfort, but not answers. The second theory said it was an asteroid, a rock thrown from another star. Perhaps in a distant system, a planet had collided. Perhaps fragments had been launched into the galaxy over millions of years. One of these fragments might have wandered into our solar system. This was also safe and natural. But again, problems appeared. Why was its shape so unusual? Why did it not behave like the countless asteroids humans already knew? And why did it accelerate in ways no asteroid ever had? The asteroid theory sounded possible, but it bent under pressure. As these safe ideas struggled, another voice grew louder. It was the voice of imagination, the voice of risk, the possibility that it was not natural at all. What if it was technology? What if it was a sail pushed by sunlight? What if it was a probe sent by a distant civilization? This idea was bold. It frightened many scientists because it sounded too close to science fiction. But it was also exciting. It gave meaning to the strangeness. It explained the acceleration. It explained the shape. And it made sense of the silence. If it was a piece of alien technology, maybe it no longer worked. Maybe it was only drifting. Maybe it was ancient, broken, and forgotten. Or maybe it was not broken at all. This theory split the community. Some said, "We cannot jump to aliens whenever we face mystery." They warned that science must not become fantasy. But others said, if we never ask bold questions, we will never find bold answers. The debate became fierce. Papers were published, arguments written, conferences filled with questions. Theories became shields, and scientists defended them like warriors. Beyond the scientific world, the public listened. They did not care for equations. They cared for stories. And the story of alien technology was irresistible. Headlines screamed, "Possible alien probe discovered." Videos spread online. Some said it was a scout sent to study Earth. Some said it was a messenger. Some said it was a warning. Imagination grew faster than the facts, and conflict grew between the sober language of science and the thrilling voice of the public. Within research groups, quiet conflicts also appeared. Some younger scientists wanted to explore wild ideas. They were open to imagining the alien possibility. But older voices urged caution. They said reputation mattered. They said science must not lose credibility in this way. 31ATLAS was not only dividing theories, it was dividing generations. Philosophers joined the conversation. They asked whether humans were even ready for such discoveries. They asked what it would mean for human identity if a visitor was truly artificial. Would it make humans feel smaller, Or would it make them feel connected? Would it cause unity, or would it cause fear? These questions turned the debate into more than science. It became cultural, psychological, and even spiritual at the same time. Skeptics grew louder. They accused others of exaggeration. They said the alien theory was only a distraction. They said the object was a rock, nothing more. For them, mystery was not proof, it was only ignorance. But their confidence was shaken, because even the most cautious explanation still admitted this was not like anything seen before. Some compared the moment to the early days of astronomy, when people first saw planets through telescopes, when Galileo said the Earth was not the center of the universe. At first, those ideas were also met with resistance. But over time, they changed everything. Perhaps, they thought, 31ATLAS could one day be remembered the same way as a turning point. A moment when humans realized the universe was more complex than they thought. The conflicts did not weaken interest, they made it stronger. Every news story about disagreement made the public more curious. Every new theory made the mystery feel alive. People stayed awake at night, staring at the sky, wondering if somewhere above, a forgotten craft was silently watching, or if a shard of another world was passing by, carrying secrets from a star humans would never see. Theories clashed like waves. Some rose high, others fell quickly, but no theory was complete. Each one left gaps, each one left doubts, and in those doubts, the mystery grew even deeper. The conflicts also revealed something about human nature. That mystery makes people dream, that uncertainty makes people argue, that wonder makes people divide into believers and doubters. 31ATLAS was not only a physical object, it was also a mirror. It reflected human curiosity, human fear, and human imagination. Some groups even suggested missions. They dreamed of sending a spacecraft to chase it, but the object was already too fast. It was leaving too quickly by the time plans were made. It was already gone too far. This made the mystery sharper, because humans could only watch from a distance. They could not touch it, they could not test it, they could only argue about it. In the end, the theories remained, the conflicts remained, but the object did not remain. It kept flying outward, silent, calm, and untouchable, leaving behind only debates, only papers, only imagination. And yet, perhaps that was its greatest gift. Not answers, but questions. Not certainty, but conflict. Because conflict makes humans search harder. It makes them build better tools, ask deeper questions, and look further into the unknown. Thus, Part 4 of the story became not about the object itself, but about the humans who tried to understand it. It became about their ideas, their conflicts, their fears, and their hopes. It became about the endless struggle between safe explanations and bold imagination. And in that struggle, the mystery of 3I Atlas grew even larger. Because while the object left, the debates did not. They stayed, echoing in lecture halls, echoing in headlines, echoing in human dreams. The theories may never be settled, the conflicts may never end, but perhaps that is the true meaning of discovery. Not to finish a story, but to begin 1,000 more. And that is what 3I Atlas gave to humanity. A mystery strong enough to divide them, a question powerful enough to unite them, and a reminder that in the endless sky, truth is never simple, it is always strange. It is always larger than we imagine. The story of 3I Atlas had already filled scientists with questions and divided them with conflicts. But now, as the object continued to move across the sky, a new layer of mystery began to rise. It was not only about its speed, not only about its strange shape, but also about the way it reflected sunlight, because, in its brightness, some thought they saw patterns, and in those patterns, some imagined messages. The telescopes recorded the object every night. Each time it spun, the light it reflected shifted. It brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again. This cycle was not smooth. It was broken and uneven. It was like a flicker, like a signal that was irregular but repeating. To the human eye, the changes looked like flashes, and to the human mind, flashes often look like communication. Some scientists explained it simply. They said the object had an uneven shape. One side reflected sunlight strongly, the other side barely reflected at all. As it tumbled, the brightness changed. This was normal, they said. It was only physics, but not everyone agreed. Others stared at the data and whispered, "It almost looks like code." It is human nature to search for meaning in patterns. When people hear thunder, they imagine voices. When they see shapes in clouds, and when they saw the flickering light of 3I Atlas, they imagined signals, signals from far away, signals from something not natural. This idea spread quickly beyond science. Writers, journalists, and dreamers began to ask the question, what if it is trying to say something? The phrase "messages in the sky" appeared in articles. People compared the object to a cosmic lighthouse, a beacon shining across space. Perhaps it was built to announce existence. Perhaps it was designed to say, "We are here." The thought captured imaginations across the world, not because it was proven, but because it was possible. Radio telescopes were pointed at the object. Scientists listened carefully. They hoped to hear something more than silence, a signal, a frequency, even the smallest trace of artificial sound. But all they heard was quiet. The object refused to speak in radio waves. It gave no sound, no voice, no song, only its flashing brightness, only its strange dance of light and shadow. Still, some said, the silence itself was suspicious. If it were only a comet, why no tail? If it were only an asteroid, why the strange acceleration? And if it were only a rock, why the repeating light curves? Questions stacked on top of each other, and in the gaps between questions, imagination filled the space. Some believed it was a broken craft. Perhaps it once had energy, once had systems, once had a mission. Now it was drifting, its signals lost, its purpose forgotten. But its broken body still spun and still reflected light in ways that looked like messages. Others believed it was deliberate, that the flickers were designed. Not broken randomness, but controlled rhythm. A cosmic Morse code written in sunlight. In online communities, people even tried to decode it. They took the brightness data. They treated the flashes as dots and dashes. They tried to see letters, numbers, hidden phrases. Nothing clear emerged. But the very act of trying showed how deep the human hunger for contact really was. Even without proof, people wanted to believe. They wanted to believe that the universe was speaking back. The conflict between natural and unnatural grew stronger. On one side, This is nothing but sunlight bouncing off a rock on the other side, believers said. But what if it is more? Between them stood the object itself, silent and untouchable, never confirming, never denying, only flashing as it spun, only moving as it pleased. Some scientists pointed out that the brightness curve had a rhythm. It was irregular, yes, but it repeated in a way. This repetition felt like heartbeat, and heartbeat always feels alive. The comparison spread. The object was described as breathing light, a phrase that made it sound less like stone and more like life. Theories multiplied again. Perhaps it was covered in metal. Perhaps it was hollow. Perhaps it had large, flat panels. Each idea explained one part, but left another unanswered. The mystery remained whole. The object was like a puzzle, where every solved piece created another missing one. Philosophers said the meaning was not in the data, but in the reaction. That humans projected their desires onto the flickers. That the object became a mirror of human longing. The longing to know, the longing to connect. Perhaps the real message was not from the object to us, but from us to ourselves. A reminder of how much we want to believe we are not alone. But belief alone could not silence the excitement. For the first time in history, an interstellar traveler passed by, and it looked strange enough to make humans ask impossible questions. Even if it said nothing, even if it did nothing, its very existence was already like a message that the universe was still full of surprises, a message that humans were still beginners in a much larger story. News programs spoke about it late into the night. Radio hosts debated. Writers created documentaries. In every voice, the same phrase returned again and again. The object may be carrying messages in the sky. This idea refused to fade. It fed on imagination. It grew stronger with every telling, and though no message was decoded, the thought itself became unforgettable. Children pointed at the night sky. They asked their parents if the object was alive. Some parents said no, some said maybe, but all felt the same quiet wonder, that something so small, so far away, could make them question the very meaning of life and intelligence. The object moved further each day, but as it went, telescopes still captured its fading light. Each faint flicker carried the same mystery. Was it only reflection, or was it communication? Was it only physics, or was it intention? The line between science and imagination blurred, and humanity walked along that line, balancing between what was known and what was dreamed. In the end, the messages were never confirmed. No code was cracked, no signal found. The object left only the possibility, but sometimes possibility is more powerful than certainty. Certainty closes a story. Possibility keeps it alive. And so the idea of messages in the sky continued, not because of proof, but because of hope. Thus, Part 5 of the story became not about what the object said, but about what humans heard. Not about real signals, but about imagined ones. It became about the way light and silence could still speak. It became about the way mystery itself could be read as message, and in that way, the object succeeded. It made the entire planet listen. It made the entire planet wonder, and it reminded the entire planet that in the great darkness of space, even silence can sound like a voice. Even flickers of light can look like words. Even a nameless rock can feel like a messenger. And so 3i, atlas continued its path, shining, flickering, tumbling, moving, leaving behind no signal, no proof, no certainty, only a question written in light, a question humans are still trying to answer, and perhaps will keep trying for centuries. The debates about 3I Atlas had filled the world with voices. Scientists argued in conferences, writers argued in newspapers, believers argued on the internet. Everywhere humans were speaking, shouting, and questioning. But above them, in the vast sky, the object itself said nothing. It moved through silence, and silence was its greatest power. The silence of space is not like the silence of a quiet room. It is deeper, darker, and endless. It has no echo, no vibration, no breath. Sound cannot travel in the vacuum. So when 3I Atlas passed through the solar system, it made no noise, no hum of engines, no roar of fire, not even the crack of rock breaking. It moved in a way that felt ghostly, present to the eye, but absent to the ear. Telescopes strained to hear. Radio dishes stretched across deserts, listening carefully. Scientists tuned their instruments to every possible frequency. They hoped for a whisper, a pulse, a call, but the only reply they received was silence. Silence so deep that it began to feel heavy. The object was not just silent, it was teaching humans about silence itself. At first, this quiet was frustrating. People wanted answers, they wanted sound, they wanted proof. But over time, the silence began to take a different shape. It began to feel like a message on its own, a message that said, "Not everything is for you to know." A message that said, "Some truths are too far, too strange, too hidden." The silence became part of the mystery, because silence does not close questions. It opens them wider. If a comet is silent, that is normal. But if a possible machine is silent, that is strange. Humans were caught between these two possibilities. And in both cases, the silence stayed the same. Writers compared it to an ancient visitor who walked through a village without speaking. Everyone saw the figure, everyone followed, everyone whispered. But the figure never looked back, never explained, never left a word. The silence became louder than any speech because it forced humans to create their own stories. In the absence of answers, imagination became the voice. Philosophers said the silence reflected the universe itself, that the cosmos does not rush to explain itself. It only shows fragments, glimpses, and mysteries. It never answers fully. It lets humans fill the silence with their own meaning. And maybe that was the real lesson, that humans must learn to live with not knowing. Yet silence also creates fear. In darkness, silence feels like danger. If the object had spoken, even with a strange sound, people might have felt relief, but silence left open the possibility of hidden intention. Some feared it was observing quietly. Some feared it was carrying messages we could not detect. Some feared it was not broken, but waiting for the right time to reveal itself. The silence was not empty. It was alive with possibilities. It carried both comfort and terror. It made the object both harmless and suspicious, both a rock and a messenger, both forgotten debris and potential technology in scientific papers. The silence was written as lack of signal, but in human hearts, the silence was written as mystery. Children looked at the stars and asked if the visitor was listening. Parents had no answers. Teachers had no answers. Even scientists, with all their tools, had no answers. The silence equalized everyone. It made all humans listeners in the same way. Some compared it to the famous search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For decades, humans had pointed antennas at the stars. They had listened to billions of frequencies. They had waited for a message, and in all that waiting, silence had been the only reply. Now, even when something came close, the silence remained. It was as if the universe itself wanted to stay hidden. But silence is not always absence. Sometimes silence is protection. A writer suggested that if 3i Atlas was technology, maybe it was designed to be silent. Maybe silence was its camouflage. Maybe silence was its shield. Because in the dark sea of space, silence is survival. If you speak, someone may hear. If you are silent, you may pass unnoticed. This idea filled people with unease, because if silence is protection, then perhaps the universe is more dangerous than humans imagine. The silence of space also reminded humans of their own fragility. On Earth, life is noisy. Birds sing, oceans roar, winds blow. Cities hum with machines, but above Earth, in the vacuum, none of that sound matters. A single planet full of voices is still drowned by silence. The scale of space is so enormous that human noise is like a spark in a storm. The visitor made that truth clear. It passed quietly, untouched by human sound, unaware or uncaring of the voices raised about it. Some scientists found beauty in this silence. They said the object's refusal to speak was poetic, that in silence, humans are forced to listen to themselves, to reflect on their place, their questions, their hopes. Perhaps the object did not need to communicate, because its silence already communicated enough. It said, "You are not the center," it said. "The universe is not yours alone," it said. "There are things you may never understand." Others, however, grew restless. They demanded answers. They said silence was unacceptable, that if humans are to survive in the cosmos, they cannot accept silence as reply. They must push harder, build stronger instruments, and demand sound. This hunger for answers grew stronger than ever. It was fueled by the very silence that denied them. As days passed, the object moved further. Its brightness faded, its flickers grew faint, and with each passing night, the silence grew thicker. It was not only silent now, it was becoming unreachable. It was moving into a silence so deep that even the best telescopes would lose it. This thought unsettled many, because once it was gone, silence would be the only thing left forever. No chance to chase it, no chance to capture it, only silence as memory. Artists painted it as a ghost ship, a vessel gliding through a silent ocean, crewless, voiceless, directionless, but carrying secrets in its hull. Others wrote poetry. They described the silence as sacred, a silence that connected Earth to the stars, a silence that reminded humans of their smallness. The silence became not only scientific but cultural. It entered art, philosophy, and even religion. Religious thinkers asked if the silence was divine. Was it God's way of reminding humanity that some mysteries are not meant to be solved? Or was it a test, a call for patience, a call for humility? For them, the silence was not emptiness. It was presence, the presence of the unknown, the presence of eternity. And in that way, the object became a symbol a silent sermon carried across the heavens, but still others resisted this view. They argued that silence must not be mistaken for magic, that silence is only ignorance, and that the task of humanity is to break silence with knowledge, to find ways to listen deeper, to find ways to make the silence speak for them. The silence of 3i Atlas was not a gift, but a challenge, one that demanded science to grow, one that demanded technology to improve, one that demanded courage to look further. In the end, silence became the most powerful part of the story, more powerful than shape, more powerful than speed, more powerful than theories. Because silence does not die, words can be forgotten, but silence stays in the memory. Silence echoes in the mind. And the silence of 3i Atlas became eternal. As the object left the solar system, its silence followed behind like a shadow. It was the last thing humans heard, and the first thing they remembered. Silence wrapped the mystery in layers. It made the visitor both closer and further, both real and unreal, both explained and unexplained. Thus, Part 6 of the story was not about sound. It was about the absence of sound. It was about how silence itself became the message, a message that humans still debate, a message that still shapes the way they imagine the universe. Because, in the silence of space, humans do not only face the unknown, they also face themselves, their fears, their hopes, their dreams, and perhaps that was the greatest revelation of all. The silence of 3i Atlas had left humans with more questions than answers. Yet silence did not stop them from speaking. In fact, the more silent the object became, the louder human voices grew. It seemed as if the mystery itself demanded a response, and so the world began to react in ways that revealed more about humanity than about the object itself. The first reaction was wonder. Ordinary people, not scientists, looked up at the night sky and felt awe for them. The knowledge that something from another star was passing overhead was enough. It did not matter if it was a comet, an asteroid, or a machine. The simple fact that it was a traveler from another system was magical. It gave them a feeling of being part of something larger, as if the universe had finally touched Earth in a direct way. Children were among the most fascinated in classrooms. Teachers spoke about the mysterious visitor. Students drew pictures of spaceships, glowing rocks, and alien messengers. For many children, this was their first introduction to astronomy. It was not numbers and equations that caught their hearts. It was story and imagination, and for those children, the visitor became a symbol of possibility, a spark that might guide them toward futures in science, art, or exploration. Writers and artists also reacted strongly. Painters captured the object as a long shard of silver across black skies. Poets described it as a ghost, a sword, a lantern in the heavens. Musicians composed pieces inspired by its silence. Some orchestras even performed concerts titled The Visitor. In these concerts, the music would rise and fall in strange rhythms, pausing at moments to mimic the silence that followed the object. Audiences listened in stillness, and many said they felt as though the music connected them to the mystery itself. Filmmakers and storytellers saw in it a chance to explore bigger themes. Movies were scripted about ancient probes drifting through the galaxy. Documentaries were created to explain both the science and the speculation. Some series focused on the possibility of alien technology. Others focused on the scientific humility of facing the unknown. In every screen, the object appeared again and again, not as one truth, but as many interpretations, each version shaped by the imagination of its creator. Religious groups also offered their reactions. Some preachers told their followers that the visitor was a sign. They said it was a reminder that humanity is not alone under the heavens. Others said it was a test of faith, that mysteries like these were meant to humble humans, that only the divine knew the answers in temples, mosques, and churches. The visitor was mentioned in sermons. It became more than a scientific event. It became a spiritual story. Not all reactions were peaceful. For some, the visitor was frightening. They imagined it as a hidden threat, a weapon drifting silently, a spy, or even a curse. Fear grew strongest in places where science was not trusted. In those spaces, imagination created monsters. People whispered about invasion, about watchers in the dark. They connected it to old myths of strange stars, and they feared it was the beginning of something humans could not control. Governments noticed these reactions. They watched as their citizens argued online, prayed in groups, painted art, and posted theories. Some leaders saw an opportunity. They spoke of unity, saying humanity was now connected by one visitor. Others used fear. They spoke of defense, of danger, of the need to protect Earth. In both cases, the object became part of politics. It became a tool for shaping opinion, even though the object itself remained silent and neutral. The media played perhaps the largest role. Television hosts debated night after night. Some laughed at the wilder theories. Others treated the visitor with seriousness and respect. Headlines were written to catch attention. The alien probe passing Earth, the silent messenger in the sky, the mystery that science cannot solve. Each title shaped public thought. Each headline turned silence into story. And the more it was told, the bigger the cultural wave became. Even social media carried the weight of reaction. Memes appeared, showing the visitor as a lost traveler looking for directions. Jokes spread about it, checking on Earth and leaving quickly. But alongside the humor, real conversations grew. People asked what humanity would do if it really was technology. Would Earth be ready to respond? Would humanity be united or divided? These conversations revealed the deeper hopes and fears that humans carry, not just about aliens, but about themselves. Scientists, though careful, were also affected by the cultural storm. Some felt frustration that their careful research was overshadowed by wild speculation. Others felt excitement that people cared at all. For years, astronomy had struggled to capture attention. But now, because of one strange object, the world was watching. The cultural impact was undeniable. For a brief time, people across nations, languages, and beliefs shared the same mystery, the same visitor, the same silence. Philosophers saw this as evidence of the human condition, that humans are storytellers first and scientists second, that when faced with the unknown, they do not wait for facts, they create meaning. They cannot stop themselves from seeing signs, from imagining messages. And so the visitor became a canvas for human dreams, a screen onto which every culture projected its own story. In literature, new books appeared. Some argued for caution in science. Some argued for open imagination. Some used the object as symbol for loneliness. Others used it as symbol for hope. One author wrote that the visitor was not alien, but a reminder of human curiosity itself, that the object was less important than the reaction it created, that it showed how much humans long for connection. As time passed and the visitor moved farther away, the cultural impact did not fade. It grew into legend. Students who first learned about it grew older and remembered it as their first wonder. Artists kept painting it. Filmmakers kept returning to the theme. Philosophers kept writing about it even after the data grew thin and the object vanished from telescopes. The story remained alive in human culture. The most powerful part of the reaction was unity. For once, people across the world looked at the same sky. For once, they all knew a traveler was passing above. And for once, they all shared the same questions. This unity did not erase conflict, but it showed that mystery has the power to cross borders. No government owned the object. No nation controlled it. It belonged to everyone, to every human eye that looked upward, and that truth touched hearts more deeply than any single answer could. Even now, years later, the cultural echoes remain. The silence of the object still whispers in documentaries. Its mystery still inspires art. Its story still appears in classrooms, and its impact still moves through human imagination. The object may have left the solar system, but it never left humanity. It became part of human history, part of the human story, a chapter that speaks not only about the visitor, but about the humans who watched it pass. Thus, Part 7 of the story became not about the science of the object, but about the culture it shaped, not about its data, but about its meaning. It showed that discovery is not only about what is found, but also about how people respond to what is found. And in that response, humanity revealed itself, curious, fearful, hopeful, divided, united, always searching for meaning. Always searching for connection, always ready to turn silence into story. The mystery of 3I Atlas did not end when it faded into the distance. In many ways, that was when the real work began. Because humans are not satisfied with silence. They are not content with unanswered questions. And so, attempts to explain the unknown grew stronger and louder. Scientists started with the most careful explanations. They looked again at the data. They studied the brightness, the tumbling, the acceleration. Every number was tested. Every line of observation was checked. Perhaps, they thought, the mystery was smaller than it seemed. Perhaps it was only error, only illusion. Perhaps the strange behavior was not strange at all. But even after checking, the strangeness remained. The object still refused to fit into known categories. It was not a comet. It was not an asteroid. It was not simple. One group suggested that it was covered in unusual ice, ice that reflected sunlight without showing a visible tail. Perhaps the gas escaping was too thin, too faint to detect. This could explain the acceleration. It was not a rocket. It was not a sail. It was only physics, but this idea faced problems. Because if the ice was there, why did telescopes not see even the smallest haze? Why did it remain so clean, so sharp, so bare? The ice theory was logical, but not complete. Another group suggested hydrogen ice. Hydrogen is the lightest element. and if it escaped, it could push the object. It would also be invisible to most instruments. This sounded promising. But hydrogen ice cannot survive long in space. It evaporates quickly, long before traveling across stars. So how could this object carry such ice after millions of years? The hydrogen idea collapsed under the weight of time. Some scientists looked toward dust. Perhaps it was a cloud of dust held together loosely. Its strange shape and spin could be explained this way. But a dust cloud would scatter light differently. It would not reflect so sharply. It would not behave so solidly. And the telescopes showed a clear, defined object, not a soft haze. So the dust theory was also set aside. Others turned to more exotic ideas. One said it might be a fragment from a shattered planet, a shard thrown across the galaxy. Its long, flat body might come from tidal forces, a planet torn apart near a star, its pieces stretched thin. This idea explained the shape, but again, it left questions. Why had such a shard not been seen before? And why did this shard accelerate, as if something pushed it? Step by step, natural explanations were tested. Each gave part of the answer, but never the whole. And each time one failed, the mystery grew deeper, because the unknown refused to shrink. It stayed large, it stayed strange. Meanwhile, some scientists dared to explore bolder ideas. They asked, what if the object was artificial? What if it was not shaped by nature, but by design? One proposal suggested it was a light sail, a thin sheet built to travel on the pressure of starlight. This would explain the acceleration without gas. It would explain the flatness, the strange reflections. But it raised an even larger question. If it was a sail, who built it? When was it launched? And why was it drifting silently through our system? Some rejected this immediately. They said science must never jump to aliens as the first answer, because mystery does not mean magic. It only means ignorance. But others reminded them that the job of science is to test every idea, even the uncomfortable ones. And so, for the first time in history, papers were published in serious journals, papers that considered artificial origin as possibility. This was not science fiction, this was serious debate. The attempt to explain the unknown now stretched between two extremes. On one side, the natural explanations. On the other side, the artificial. Between them stood uncertainty. And uncertainty was heavier than either answer. Beyond the world of science, ordinary people also made attempts. Amateur astronomers tried to build their own models. Writers created theories that blended myth and science. Some said the object was a probe left millions of years ago, a silent messenger wandering until it found a new star. Others said it was debris, the wreckage of an ancient civilization long gone. The attempts multiplied endlessly, each person trying to explain the unknown in their own way. But attempts are not only answers, they are also mirrors. They show what humans value, what humans fear. The scientist who explained it as ice valued caution. The poet who called it a messenger valued meaning. The leader who used it for politics valued power. Every attempt revealed more about the humans than about the object. Philosophers reminded the public of this truth. They said the unknown is not always meant to be solved quickly. Sometimes the unknown is a gift, a reminder that knowledge has limits, that human understanding is only a small candle in a vast darkness, and that mystery keeps the candle burning brighter. if every mystery were solved? Curiosity would fade, and without curiosity, humanity would stop moving forward. Still, the drive to explain did not fade years after the visitor passed. New models were created. Computers simulated its path, its spin, its light curve. New telescopes searched the skies for others like it. And indeed, another interstellar visitor was found later. But even with more data, 3I-ATLAS remained special, because it was the first, and the first always carries the deepest mystery. Attempts to explain the unknown are also attempts to control fear, because the unknown is frightening. It feels like standing in the dark without a lamp. Every explanation, even a weak one, feels like lighting a small candle. It may not show the whole room, but it eases the fear. That is why humans explain, not only to know, but to feel safe, to believe that the universe is not chaos, but something that can be understood. And yet, the universe is not obliged to be understood. It does not promise answers. It only offers glimpses. The object was one such glimpse, a reminder that the unknown is larger than human knowledge, and that every attempt to explain it is both progress and poetry. Thus, Part 8 of the story became not about one explanation, but about many attempts that stretched from cautious science to wild imagination, attempts that revealed the nature of humanity itself, because to be human is to explain, to refuse silence, to resist mystery, and yet to always live inside it. For even as 3I Atlas moved away, the attempts did not end. They continued, and they still continue. Proof that the unknown is the most powerful force of all, not because it hides answers, but because it creates endless questions. The story of 3I Atlas did not end with its departure. In fact, in many ways, that was only the beginning, because even when the object itself was gone, the echoes it left behind were loud. They spread across science, across technology, across human imagination. Scientists could not forget what they had seen. They could not forget the strange shape, the odd tumbling, the unexplained acceleration. These mysteries echoed in their work. They shaped new questions, new projects, new searches. Every telescope that scanned the sky carried the shadow of that visitor. Every new discovery was compared to it. It had become a silent benchmark, a ghost that haunted the science of space. The first echo was in astronomy itself, before 3I Atlas. Most astronomers assumed the solar system was unique in its safety. Yes, comets came, asteroids passed, but interstellar visitors seemed unlikely. They belonged more to science fiction than to real science. But when 3I Atlas arrived, that belief shattered. It proved that the solar system was not a closed box. It was open, connected to the galaxy. Objects from distant stars could and did cross its borders. This realization changed everything. It meant humans were part of a larger cosmic traffic, not isolated, but linked, not alone, but open to encounters. Telescopes were upgraded. Search programs expanded. Networks of observatories worked together in new ways, all to catch the next visitor, because now everyone knew there would be another. And indeed, another came. But even with the second, the echo of the first remained stronger, because the first is always the one that changes the mind. The second echo was in technology. The strange behavior of the object made scientists think about propulsion. If it was a light sail, then why not build one? If sunlight could push an object across space, then humans might use the same idea. This was not just imagination. It became real research. Projects were planned to send tiny sails. They would ride on beams of light, no fuel, no rockets, only the gentle push of radiation. And this was not only inspired by dreams, it was inspired by the echo of that visitor. Because sometimes to copy is to learn, and if nature, or someone else, had used such a design, then humans could try it too. The echo also appeared in physics. The fact that the object accelerated without gas or engines forced scientists to rethink. Maybe they did not fully understand small forces in space. Maybe sunlight, gas, dust, or even unknown factors were at play. This opened new studies in how small objects move. It led to better models of comets, better tracking of asteroids. It improved the way humans predict the paths of near-Earth objects. And this was not only curiosity, it was also safety. Because if Earth is ever threatened by an asteroid, knowing its true path is the difference between danger and survival. The echo spread to engineering as well. Satellites were studied for sail-like designs. Could thin materials help them move without fuel? Could radiation pressure be turned from a problem into a tool? The visitor had given a hint, and hints are enough for human creativity to build upon. But the echo was not only in machines. It was also in human thought. Philosophers asked, what does it mean that something from another star passed by? Does it remind us that the galaxy is alive with movement? Does it remind us that humans are not at the center? That Earth is not special? That the universe is wider, colder, and more connected than we feel? These questions became part of books, lectures, and debates. The echo was intellectual, not only technical. The echo reached into culture as well. Movies were made, novels were written, songs were sung, all about a silent stranger that visited. It became a symbol. For some, it symbolized mystery. For others, loneliness. For others, still hope. That maybe the universe is not empty. That maybe there are others out there, and even if they are silent, their creations may wander across stars. The echo in science was precise, but the echo in culture was emotional. It reminded people that the night sky is not still. It is alive, it is moving, it is filled with travelers unseen, and one of them had chosen, or perhaps only happened, to pass through our sight in universities. The story of the visitor became a lesson. Students studied it to learn how science handles the unknown, how theories rise and fall, how data must be trusted but also questioned. It became an example of humility, a reminder that even with the best tools, surprises will come, and surprises are the true heartbeat of science. Some inventors even claimed the object gave them ideas, not direct instructions, but inspiration. If a rock could move in strange ways, then maybe ships could too. If a fragment could cross the galaxy, then maybe humans could dream bigger. These ideas led to designs that seemed futuristic, floating stations, solar sails, all whispers of what might come one day. The echo also influenced how space agencies planned missions. They realized that interstellar objects are not just rare accidents. They are opportunities if another comes. It must be studied up close. not only with telescopes, but with spacecraft. Plans were written for missions that could launch quickly, fast probes ready to chase the next visitor. This was the echo turning into action, turning mystery into preparation. But perhaps the deepest echo was not in science or machines. It was in the human heart. Because to know that something came from the stars and left without answers is a feeling that does not fade. It is like seeing a traveler on a road who never stops, never speaks, only passes. It makes you wonder, who are they? Where are they going? And will we ever meet again? This feeling is both sadness and wonder. Sadness because it left, wonder because it came at all. The echoes in technology may one day fade. The echoes in culture may shift into other stories. But the echo in the human imagination will remain. Because once the mind has stretched to consider the unknown, it does not return to its old shape. And 3I Atlas stretched the human mind. It pulled thought outward. It showed that the universe is more open than we thought. It left behind not just questions, but new ways of asking questions. The echo of the visitor was not a sound, it was not a signal. It was not a message in clear letters, but it was real. It was the sound of human thought changing, the sound of curiosity growing louder, the sound of imagination refusing to stay small. That is why Part 9 belongs to echoes, because echoes are what remain when the original sound is gone, and though the visitor is far away now, its echoes are still here, in science, in technology, in culture, in imagination, and perhaps they will remain for generations, reminding each new group of humans that the unknown is not far. It has already passed by once, and it will pass by again. When the object called 3I Atlas was first announced, it carried a weight that few expected. It was only a rock, some said, a fragment of space, nothing more, but for others, it was a stranger. And strangers always awaken both fear and fascination. The fear came first for many people. Humans fear what they do not understand. They fear what does not follow rules. 3I Atlas did not follow rules. It moved strangely. It accelerated when it should not. It reflected light in unexpected ways. If something in the sky behaves in ways we cannot explain, it becomes unsettling, because the sky is supposed to be predictable. The sun rises, the moon waxes and wanes. The planets follow their paths. When something refuses to obey those patterns, it feels dangerous. Some people feared it might strike the Earth, even though astronomers explained it would not. Even though the trajectory showed no risk, still the fear remained, because deep down, humans remember stories of fire from the sky. They remember craters, impacts, extinctions. The fear of falling rocks is written in human memory. So when an interstellar rock passed by, that old fear returned. Others feared it was more than a rock. They whispered that it might be a probe, a machine watching Earth, an eye from another civilization. The thought of being observed without permission is enough to make anyone uneasy. And so fear grew, not only from science, but from imagination. Each unexplained detail became fuel for worry. At the same time, fascination rose just as strongly. Because fear and fascination are two sides of the same coin. What scares us also attracts us. The mystery of 3I Atlas pulled people in. They wanted to see it, to know it, to claim some part of its story. Telescopes were booked, observatories crowded, articles read by millions. The object was not only science, it was theater, a cosmic play unfolding above. And humans were both the audience and the actors. Children stared at the night sky. They asked their parents if the visitor could hear them. Writers filled notebooks with stories of alien ships and forgotten messengers. Filmmakers saw the shape as inspiration for otherworldly designs. The fascination spread far beyond science. It reached the human heart because the unknown is frightening, but it is also beautiful. In the halls of universities, students debated late into the night. Was it natural? Was it artificial? Was it debris? Was it a message? Each side argued passionately, not only because they cared about science, but because they were fascinated by the unknown. The object became a spark that lit minds on fire. It was no longer only an object, it was an idea. And ideas can be more powerful than matter. Fear and fascination also shaped the media. Headlines spoke of danger, then of wonder, then of mystery. Each article pulled the public in. Every mention of alien probe multiplied clicks and views. Every reassurance from scientists that it was only a rock was quickly buried under louder voices of imagination. Fear cells, fascination cells, and together they made the story of the visitor impossible to ignore. For some, the fear was personal. They lay awake at night, thinking of being watched. They worried that another object might come, one not so harmless. They felt small under the vastness of space. For others, the fascination was personal too. They dreamed of traveling with the visitor, of riding on its silent path across the stars. They imagined it as a messenger carrying secrets. They hoped it was proof that humanity is not alone. This mix of emotions revealed something deep about human nature. Humans are not built to respond with calm neutrality. They feel, they imagine, they dream, they worry. And the sky has always been a mirror for those feelings. Long ago, it was gods and omens. Now it is science and aliens. But the emotion is the same. The sky is never only above us, it is inside us. Fear pushed some people away from the story. They said, "Stop talking about aliens. Stop spreading panic. It is just a rock." Fascination pulled others deeper. They said, "Keep looking, keep wondering, keep asking, what if?" Between the two forces, the story remained alive, never fading, never forgotten. Scientists felt this tension too. They were trained to be cautious, to avoid fear, to avoid speculation. But they were also human. They too felt the pull of mystery. They too looked at the data and thought, what if? What if it really is not natural? What if it is something more, even if they never said it aloud? The fascination lived inside them. Fear can paralyze, but fascination can inspire. Together, they pushed humanity forward. Fear led to safety planning, to thinking about asteroid defense. Fascination led to new projects, to new technologies. Two bold dreams of interstellar travel. The visitor was gone, but the emotions it left remained powerful. They shaped actions long after its light had faded. In villages, cities, and quiet towns, people told each other the story. Some told it as a warning, a reminder that the universe can surprise us. Others told it as a dream, a reminder that the universe might hold friends we have not yet met. Each telling carried both fear and fascination, because the story could not exist without both. The dual emotions also shaped the larger question of humanity's place. If 3I Atlas was natural, then it was a piece of the galaxy's chaos. If it was artificial, then it was a piece of the galaxy's intelligence. In both cases, fear and fascination walked side by side. Fear of being too small in a vast chaos, fascination at being part of a vast intelligence. Years later, when people remembered the visitor, they remembered their own feelings. Some recalled the nervousness, the uneasy nights, wondering if the object would change direction. Others recalled the wonder, the thrill of being alive at the moment when the first interstellar visitor was seen. Both memories were true, both were part of the same story. And this is why Part 10 belongs to fear and fascination. Because those emotions were not mistakes, they were not illusions. They were the most human response possible. The visitor itself was silent. It carried no fear, no fascination, only motion. But in its silence, humans poured their own hearts. They gave it meaning through their feelings. They gave it life through their reactions. They turned a rock into a story. They turned a visitor into a mirror. The story of 3I Atlas was not only about physics or shapes or acceleration. It was about humans learning how they feel when the unknown arrives. It was about fear that protects, fascination that inspires. It was about the balance between the two. And perhaps this balance is the very force that drives progress. Without fear, there is no caution. Without fascination, there is no curiosity. Without both, humanity would stand still. But with both, humanity continues to move. The visitor had no voice, but if it did, perhaps it would have said, "I am not your fear. I am not your fascination. I am only myself." Yet for humans, that was never enough. They needed to feel something, and so they did. They feared, they dreamed, they wondered, and those feelings kept the story alive long after the visitor vanished. Fear and fascination remain. They remain in science, in art, in memory. They remain in the questions we still ask. And they remind us that the unknown is not only out there, it is inside us, waiting to be awakened again when the next stranger passes through. When the visitor called 3I Atlas finally drifted beyond the reach of most telescopes, the sky grew quiet again. No flashes, no tumbling light, no sudden acceleration, only silence. The silence was not empty, though. It was heavy, heavy with questions, with debates, with memories of what had just passed. For scientists, the silence meant frustration. They had gathered as much data as possible, but now there would be no more light curves to study, no more new measurements. The stranger was gone, taking its secrets with it. And science does not like silence. Science grows in noise, in data, in evidence. Silence is a kind of wall. It stops progress. It forces patience. And patience is the hardest skill for curious minds. For the public, the silence felt like an unfinished story. When the object was first discovered, news outlets carried constant updates. Each night brought new headlines. Each day carried new theories. But once it was gone, the headlines faded. People looked up at the same night sky, but it seemed a little emptier. The show had ended, the actor had left, and the audience was left waiting for an encore. This silence was not new, though. The universe has always worked in silences. A star explodes in light, then leaves centuries of quiet ashes. A comet blazes across the sky, then disappears for decades. moments of wonder are brief. The silence after them is long, and humans live inside those silences, remembering, retelling, imagining, trying to fill the quiet with meaning in laboratories. The silence was filled with analysis. Computers ran endless models of the object's path. Simulations tried to recreate its spin, its shape, its acceleration. Each result brought small clarity, but never the full picture. It was like piecing together a puzzle with missing parts. The silence kept those parts hidden, and so the puzzle remained unsolved. The silence was filled with waiting. Astronomers scanned the sky for another visitor. They upgraded their instruments. They shared networks of data. They told themselves that the next time they would be ready sooner. But readiness does not guarantee discovery. The sky does not obey human schedules. The next visitor would come when it wished. And until then, silence ruled for ordinary people. The silence was filled with stories. Parents told children about the rock from another star. Some told it as a tale of danger. Others told it as a tale of mystery. Some added details never seen. They spoke of glowing trails or secret signals. The silence gave room for imagination, and imagination does not like to be quiet. It fills gaps with dreams and fears. It builds legends when facts fall short. Philosophers reflected on the silence itself. They said the silence after the visitor was more important than the visitor itself. Because silence creates space for thought, it forces reflection. It reminds humans that the universe does not perform for them. The universe does not owe explanations. The universe does not rush to satisfy curiosity. Instead, it gives glimpses, and then it returns to silence. And in that silence, humans must learn humility. The long silence after 3 IATLAS also changed how people looked at time. They realized that interstellar visitors may be rare, that centuries could pass before another comes, or that dozens could appear in a single lifetime. The silence was unpredictable. It might last a decade. It might last an age. And this uncertainty became part of the mystery. In some ways, the silence made the visitor more powerful, because now it lived only in memory, and memories are shaped by those who hold them. Each person remembered the visitor differently. To some, it was a rock. To others, it was a messenger. To some, it was proof of nature's strangeness. To others, it was proof of alien intelligence. The silence allowed all these versions to coexist. No new data came to prove or disprove them. So the story grew freer. It became a legend as much as a fact. For governments and space agencies, the silence was a call to action. They realized that waiting passively would not be enough. If another visitor came, they wanted to be ready to meet it. Plans were drawn for spacecraft that could launch quickly, probes that could chase an interstellar object before it was gone. The silence became strategy. It was not empty. It was preparation. But for dreamers, the silence was something else. It was an ache for what had been lost, an ache for a stranger that came and went too quickly. Some stood under the stars, whispering their own thoughts, as if the visitor might still hear them, even across the void, even across the silence. The long silence after also highlighted a truth about humanity, that humans are not built for patience on cosmic scales. They want answers now. They want visitors to stay. They want the sky to reveal its secrets without delay, but the universe does not work that way. Its stories are slow, its silences are long, and humans must learn to live inside them. Religions also found meaning in the silence. Some said the visitor was a sign not of aliens, but of divine design, that the silence after was a test of faith. Others said it was proof of creation's vastness, that humans are small but chosen to witness. The silence became holy to some. It became spiritual. It became a pause filled with prayer for scientists. However, the silence was filled with pressure. They worried that without new data, the public would lose interest, that funding would fade, that attention would turn away, and yet the silence gave them freedom too. Freedom to debate without headlines. Freedom to imagine without constant scrutiny. In the quiet, they could ask bold questions. In the quiet, they could explore without fear of ridicule. The silence gave science time to breathe. Years passed, and the silence stretched longer. Yet the story of the visitor did not disappear. It lived in books, in films, in classrooms, in conversations. Every time someone looked up at the stars and wondered, the silence was broken, not by the object, but by memory, not by new data, but by imagination. The silence after 3, because silence itself is part of every great story. It creates suspense. It deepens reflection. It makes the next sound, the next discovery, feel even louder. The silence after the visitor was long, but it was not empty. It was filled with waiting, with dreaming, with preparation, and it was a reminder that in the universe, silence is never truly nothing. It is space for the next mystery to arrive. The silence after the departure of 3I Atlas did not last in human hearts. While the sky returned to its calm, scientists and dreamers could not stay calm. The visitor had left, but the questions it raised remained like an echo, and this echo was too strong to ignore. In space agencies across the world, conversations began. They all asked the same question. What if another one comes? And what if next time it does not stay long? The first visitor had surprised everyone by the time telescopes caught it. The object was already leaving. It had come unannounced. It had stayed only briefly, and then it had gone. That mistake could not be repeated. If another came, humans wanted to be ready. Astronomers suggested building better eyes on the sky. New telescopes with wider fields, faster sensors, stronger computers, machines that could sweep the heavens every night, catching faint dots before they slipped away. The plan was not easy. It needed money. It needed time. It needed cooperation between nations. But the memory of 3I Atlas was fresh, and memories can move mountains. Some scientists dreamed even bigger. They spoke of building spacecraft that could wait in space, machines on standby, ready to chase the next visitor. They imagined rockets with engines that could start within days, probes that could fly fast, faster than anything built before, to follow an interstellar traveler into the darkness. It sounded bold. It sounded impossible. But humans had once said the same about walking on the moon, and yet they had walked. So perhaps this too could be done in classrooms. The story of the first visitor inspired students. Children raised their hands and asked, what if the next one is a spaceship? What if the next one carries messages? What if the next one is dangerous? Teachers smiled, but could not give clear answers. because no one knew the next visitor could be rock or machine. It could be natural or artificial. It could be harmless, or it could change everything. That was the truth. And that truth made preparation even more urgent. Philosophers joined the conversation too. They reminded people that preparation was not just about machines. It was also about minds. If humans were to meet something truly alien, were they ready? Were they humble enough to listen? Were they wise enough to respond with care? The philosophers argued that preparing for the next visitor meant preparing human hearts, not only building rockets, but also building patience and wisdom. Governments, however, thought in practical terms. They asked, what if the next visitor hits Earth? What if it is not a small rock, but a giant one? Preparation then meant defense. Missiles, shields, plans to protect the planet. And so in secret rooms, strategies were drawn. Some to explore, some to defend, both born from the same mystery, both born from the same silence. The public too prepared in their own way. Writers wrote novels, filmmakers made movies, artists painted canvases. They imagined the next visitor in countless forms, some glowing like angels, some cold like machines, some vast like whales drifting in the sky. This creativity was its own kind of preparation, because imagination makes the mind flexible. It helps people see beyond the limits of today. And when the real thing arrives, imagination is what helps humanity respond. Meanwhile, scientists trained themselves to look deeper. They rechecked old data. They asked if other visitors had been missed before. Perhaps the first was not truly the first. Perhaps others had slipped by unseen in past centuries. The idea was haunting, that the sky may have been whispering for ages. But humans had not yet learned to listen. Now they promised to listen better. Technology, too, began to change. Artificial intelligence was brought into the search. Algorithms learned to scan billions of stars and galaxies quickly. They were taught to notice the unusual, the strange, the out of place. Where human eyes grew tired, machines kept watching. It was as if Earth itself was planting sentinels in the sky, always awake, always searching, preparing for the moment another traveler appeared. Some people questioned all this. They asked, why prepare so much for something so rare? Why spend billions for a chance so small? But others replied, the universe is vast. Rocks and stars drift endlessly. Visitors are not rare. Only our ability to see them is rare. And now that our eyes are opening, more will surely come. Preparation was not wasted. It was inevitable. Religious leaders prepared in their own way. Some held prayers for the next visitor, asking that it bring peace, not fear. Others warned their people that the next one could test faith, that humanity must stand strong in belief. Thus, even faith became part of preparation, because when the unknown comes, all parts of humanity respond. Science, art, politics, faith, imagination, fear, and hope. Years passed, but the story of preparation continued. Workshops met, space agencies signed agreements. Telescopes grew larger, satellites grew smarter. The silence after 3 IATLAS was not empty anymore. It was filled with the hum of effort, a hum that stretched across nations, a hum that whispered, we are waiting, we are ready, we are preparing. Yet, in the quiet moments, some scientists admitted a deeper truth. No matter how much preparation was made, the next visitor could still surprise them. Because the universe loves to surprise, it always brings the unexpected. The next traveler might not look like a rock. It might not move like a comet. It might not behave like anything humans had seen before. And in that case, all preparation would become only a beginning. Not an answer, but a doorway to more questions. This was not a reason to stop preparing, though. It was the opposite, because preparation is not about control. It is about respect. Respect for the unknown. Respect for the universe. Respect for the truth that humans are small but capable of learning. By preparing, humans showed they were ready to learn again, ready to meet the next mystery with open eyes. Children who had once read about Three-Eye Atlas grew up. Some became scientists, some became engineers, some became philosophers. All carried the same fire in their hearts. The fire of preparation, the belief that one day another traveler would come, and when it did, they wanted to be the ones to greet it. The long silence after the first visitor was filled with dreams. But those dreams did not stay only as dreams. They became blueprints. They became plans. They became projects. A world once caught by surprise now stood on alert, like a guard waiting at the gate, like a host preparing for a guest. No one knew when, no one knew how, but everyone knew this: the next visitor would not pass unseen. This time humanity would be ready, and so, under the calm and endless stars, the preparations continued, silent but strong, waiting for the moment when the universe would knock again, waiting for the next story to begin. Even as preparations for the next visitor continued, the memory of Three-Eye Atlas refused to rest. The object was gone, but the questions it left behind were louder than ever. And with no new data, arguments grew stronger, not weaker, because, in the silence, people filled the gaps with their own answers. In universities, scientists debated every detail. Some said it was a simple rock, a shard of another world thrown out by gravity, a traveler with no purpose, no design, only motion. They pointed to the numbers, to the brightness, to the curve of its path. To them, the mystery was only an illusion created by missing data. If humans had better tools, they argued, the object would appear ordinary. Others disagreed. They said the object was too strange to be natural. The way it moved, the way it sped up as it left, the way its shape reflected light, it did not fit the patterns of comets or asteroids. They claimed it was engineered, perhaps a fragment of alien technology, perhaps even a probe. They did not claim certainty, but they asked, why close the door too soon? Why not leave room for possibility? These debates filled conference halls. Arguments spilled into papers, articles, and books. One group said, ordinary rock. The other said, extraordinary machine. The clash was endless. Each side accused the other of ignoring evidence. Each side claimed truth, and yet truth remained silent, locked away with the visitor itself, drifting forever in the dark. For the public, the debates became a kind of theater. News channels invited scientists to argue on air. One voice calm and certain, another passionate and bold. Audiences watched, fascinated. Some sided with the rock theory. Others loved the idea of alien design. And in living rooms, the same arguments repeated. Families, friends, strangers, all debating what the visitor truly was. The debate even reached politics. Some leaders said the visitor was harmless, a reminder of the natural universe. Others whispered that it was dangerous, a sign that aliens were near, that humanity must prepare for contact or for conflict. Thus, science became strategy, and the debate turned into policy. Writers, too, joined the debate. They wrote novels inspired by each side. Some imagined the visitor as a wandering relic, an ancient ship, broken and lost. Others imagined it as nothing but a stone, but one carrying symbols humans could never read. Stories multiplied. Each story claimed a kind of truth, even if it was truth shaped by imagination. Religions also took part. Some declared the visitor was not alien at all. It was a sign from the heavens, a message to remind humans of their place. Others warned that the debate itself was dangerous, that too much curiosity could lead to pride, and pride, they said, had always led humans to fall. So even faith became another voice in the endless argument. In laboratories, silence often followed these debates, because scientists knew the truth. The truth was that no one had enough data. The visitor had been caught too late. Its secrets had slipped away. And so every conclusion rested on guesses. Even the strongest voices were building castles on sand. And in private, many admitted their doubts. But in public, the debate raged on, because silence is harder to accept. Philosophers stepped forward with their own thoughts. They asked, why must the object be either rock or machine? Why not both? Why not something beyond human categories? They argued that the debate itself showed the limits of human thinking, that humans always wanted to fit the unknown into familiar boxes, asteroid or alien, natural or artificial, but perhaps the universe was stranger than both. Perhaps the visitor was something humans did not yet have words to describe. The endless debate became more than a question of science. It became a mirror showing how humans think, how they argue, how they believe, how they fear. Some clung to certainty because certainty feels safe. Others embraced mystery because mystery feels exciting. Both sides revealed truths, not about the object, but about the human heart. Years passed, and still the debate did not end. Each new book reopened the fight. Each new lecture revived the old arguments. Younger generations joined, some more cautious, some more daring. The visitor had left, but the conversation remained alive like fire, hidden in coals, never burning out completely, always waiting for breath to rise again. In one sense, this endless debate was frustrating. It showed the limits of knowledge. It showed how little humans truly understood. But in another sense, it was beautiful, because debate is also life. It is thought in motion. It is the refusal to stay silent. And in that refusal, the story of the visitor continued. Not in telescopes, but in minds. Not in measurements, but in words. Some scientists feared the debate would divide people, that endless argument would turn into endless distrust. But others saw it differently. They said the debate kept the mystery alive, and keeping mystery alive is sometimes as important as solving it, because mystery fuels curiosity, and curiosity fuels progress. Perhaps, they said, the truth about the visitor did not matter as much as the questions it created. Perhaps the endless debate was the real gift it left behind. In the quiet corners of the world, Dreamers listened to all sides. They did not choose rock or machine. They simply wondered. They wondered about the vastness of space, about travelers unseen, about secrets drifting between stars. For them, the debate was not something to win. It was something to feel, a reminder that the universe is full of doors still closed, and every argument is a hand reaching for a key. And so, as the years moved on, the debate did not fade. It changed, it grew, it spread into art, science, politics, and faith. The visitor had been silent, but humans had not. The endless debate was proof that even silence can speak, if people are willing to listen. Thus, 3i Atlas remained not only as a memory, but as a question without end, a question that pulled humans into deeper thought. And perhaps that was the true purpose of its visit, not to reveal answers, but to leave behind a question big enough to last forever. The endless debate about 3i Atlas did not only live inside universities and observatories. It spread far beyond, into homes, schools, books, and even into dreams, because whenever humans face the unknown, two great forces rise together. One is science, the search for truth through evidence. The other is imagination, the power to dream beyond what is known. And in the years after the visitor left, these two forces began to walk side by side. For scientists, the visitor was data, numbers on screens, curves of light, angles of speed. It was an object to be measured, calculated, tested. But for dreamers, it was a symbol, a messenger from the deep, a doorway into infinite stories. And slowly, the two began to realize they needed each other. Science without imagination can be blind. It sees only what is expected. It misses the strange, the unusual, the impossible. Imagination without science can be wild. It builds castles of fantasy without ground. It flies but never lands. But when dreams meet science, something greater happens. Truth is sought with both reason and wonder. And the visitor became the place where this meeting grew stronger. In classrooms, children were the first to show this meeting. Teachers gave them the story of 3i Atlas, and their hands rose with endless questions. Could it be a spaceship? Could it carry life? Could it be older than the Earth? Some questions made scientists laugh. Others made them pause. Because sometimes the imagination of a child sees paths that science has not yet walked. Writers and filmmakers joined too. They imagined worlds where visitors carried messages, stories where travelers from other stars came to test humanity, stories where they came only to pass by. These dreams did not give evidence, but they gave energy. They kept the story alive in hearts. And when hearts are alive, science is given new support. Because curiosity needs passion, and passion often begins in dreams. In research labs, imagination became a tool. Scientists asked, what if it really was artificial? How would we prove it? What signs should we search for in the next visitor? Even if they did not believe in alien design, they used the dream as a guide for new experiments. They prepared instruments, not only for what was likely, but also for what was possible. Dreams stretched the boundaries of science. They opened doors to tests that might otherwise never be done. Philosophers saw this blend clearly. They said that the story of 3i Atlas showed a deep truth, that knowledge grows not only from answers, but from questions. And questions often begin in imagination. Without dreams, humans would not have asked if the earth could be round. Without dreams, they would not have wondered if stars are suns. Without dreams, they would not have thought of walking on the moon. And so, they argued. The debate and the dreams were not weakness, they were fuel. This meeting of dreams and science also shaped technology. Inventors began designing telescopes that could see further, satellites that could scan the skies every night. Some of these machines were built not only because of hard science, but also because of wonder, because people dreamed of finding another traveler. They wanted the chance not to miss it this time. And dreams gave the courage to spend time, money, and energy on ideas once called impossible. The visitor had been silent, but in its silence, it spoke to both reason and imagination, and the two began to weave together like threads of the same cloth. One thread of logic, one thread of wonder. Together they formed something strong, something that could last. Even artists began working with scientists. Painters worked with astronomers to show the visitors possible shapes. Musicians wrote songs inspired by its path. Some of these songs carried rhythms based on its speed. Some paintings were based on telescope data. Science provided the skeleton. Imagination gave it flesh. Together they built images that touched both the mind and the heart. The public responded strongly. For them, the story of the visitor was more than numbers. It was a story of place, of time, of meaning. They wanted to feel part of the cosmos. And through art and science joined, they could see, they could feel, they could imagine. The visitor was no longer far away. It was alive in their own world. Governments noticed this energy when citizens dreamed. They asked for more space exploration. When children spoke of stars, leaders listened, and soon funding followed. New projects rose. Telescopes on mountains, observatories in deserts, satellites in orbit. Even talk of missions waiting in space. Dreams had pushed science into action, and science, in turn, gave dreams new shape. Still, some worried. They said that dreams might blind people, that imagination might lead to wild beliefs. But others answered, better to dream and search than to stay silent and miss the wonder. Better to prepare for possibilities than to close the door too soon. This balance was not easy. It was fragile, but it was also powerful, because balance is where progress grows. The story of 3I Atlas showed humanity that the border between dream and science is thin. When the visitor was first seen, it was only data. Then it became debate. Then it became dream. And finally, it became both. It lived as fact in observatories. It lived as story in books. It lived as a symbol in hearts. This union was its true legacy. For the dreamers, science gave grounding. For the scientists, dreams gave wings. Together they built a larger view of the universe, one where questions were not weakness, but strength, one where the unknown was not fear, but invitation, one where silence was not emptiness, but a pause for imagination. Children grew up carrying this lesson. Some became scientists, others became artists, but both groups carried the same fire. That science and dream are not enemies. They are partners. The visitor had shown them this, not through words, not through signals, but through its very mystery, a mystery that demanded both logic and wonder to even begin to understand. The endless debate still continued, but now it was less of a battle. It was more like a dance. One side moved with evidence, the other with imagination, and though they often disagreed, together they created movement, movement that kept the story alive, movement that kept curiosity awake, movement that prepared humanity for the next surprise. Thus, in the years after the first interstellar traveler, the world learned something deeper than facts about one object. It learned how to see, how to look with eyes of science, and with eyes of wonder, how to listen with logic and with dreams, how to prepare with machines and with stories. The visitor had come and gone, but it left behind this gift, a union of dream and science, a partnership that would carry humanity further. And so, under the quiet stars, scientists kept building, dreamers kept imagining, and together they waited for the moment when the universe would again whisper, when another traveler would cross the sky, and when it did, humanity would greet it not with one voice, but with two, the voice of reason and the voice of dream, together, stronger, ready. When the visitor called Three-Eye Atlas had long left the sky, when telescopes no longer searched for its faint trail, when the debates had slowed and the preparations had taken shape, something deeper remained. It was not the object itself, because that had gone into the dark forever. It was the legacy, the echo of the unknown, an echo that touched science, touched imagination, touched philosophy, touched human hearts. The legacy began with a simple truth, that humanity had been visited, not by a signal, not by a radio call, but by a silent traveler. It had come from beyond the stars. It had entered the solar system uninvited. It had left questions too heavy for answers. And this truth changed how humans saw themselves. For centuries, humans had looked at the night sky and wondered. They asked if they were alone. They asked if other worlds knew their name. 3-1 Atlas had not answered these questions, but it had reminded them that the universe is not empty, that objects, strangers, wanderers, pass between stars, that the sky is not a painting, but a living road, and this changed everything. The legacy of the unknown was also humility, because even with powerful telescopes, advanced computers, and skilled minds, the visitor had surprised humanity. It had slipped into the system before anyone noticed. It had left before full study could begin. This reminded humans that their knowledge, though vast, was still young, that their place in the cosmos was still small, that even with science and technology, mystery would always be greater. But this humility was not weakness, it was strength, because humility fuels curiosity. It keeps the door open. It makes humans look again, search again, prepare again. And this was part of the legacy, that science must always stay awake, always expect surprise, always be ready to meet the unknown. The legacy was also unity, because the visitor did not belong to one nation. It was not American, not European, not Asian, not African. It belonged to the cosmos, and so to everyone, for a brief time. People across the world shared the same wonder. They all looked at the same object, asked the same questions, felt the same awe. The sky had united them in mystery, even as they argued, even as they debated. They argued together, and that unity, rare and fragile, was part of the gift the visitor left. Writers and artists carried another part of the legacy. They turned the visitor into myth. Not myth to hide truth, but myth to carry it further. Stories of silent messengers, lost machines, wandering fragments of creation, songs that carried its path as melody, paintings that showed it glowing like a shard of another sun. Through these works, the visitor would never be forgotten. Even if the data faded, even if the papers grew dusty, the myth would remain. And myth itself became part of the legacy, because myths carry memory longer than books. For scientists, the legacy was sharper. It was the lesson of readiness. They learned that the universe does not wait, that chances are brief, that discovery requires speed, cooperation, and courage. So they built better telescopes, faster computers, stronger networks. They designed missions to chase the next visitor. All these were born from the memory of 3I, ATLAS. The visitor was gone, but its legacy fueled the future of science. For philosophers, the legacy was silence. They said the silence after the visitor was as important as the visitor itself. Because silence creates meaning, it forces humans to face the unknown without answers. It teaches patience. It reminds them that not everything is given. Not everything is explained, and this silence became part of human thought, a reminder that mystery is not weakness but depth. For dreamers, the legacy was hope, hope that the universe was alive with travelers, hope that one day a visitor might bring more than silence, hope that humanity's story was part of a larger cosmic story. They looked at the stars and no longer saw emptiness. They saw pathways, highways of stone and light, and they dreamed of following them. The unknown had given them direction, not of where to go, but of why to go. Because to meet the unknown is to find meaning, the legacy also carried warning. Because the visitor had shown how fragile human observation was. What if the next visitor was not harmless? What if it was large enough to strike the earth? What if it carried dangers unseen? This fear was not despair. It was responsibility to prepare, to protect, to guard. And so part of the legacy was caution, not panic, but wisdom to be ready as years passed. The visitor became both history and legend. New generations learned of it in classrooms. Some treated it as science, others as story, but all carried the same sense of awe. Because the legacy was not about answers, it was about awakening. The awakening of curiosity, of imagination, of responsibility. The awakening of a world that realized space is not far. It is here, touching, moving, alive. The visitor had not spoken. It had not revealed its nature. But sometimes silence is the loudest voice. The silence of 3IATLAS told humans that the universe is bigger than their questions, that they must keep asking, keep searching, keep dreaming. And this was the final legacy, that the unknown itself is a gift that keeps the mind alive, a gift that keeps the heart open, a gift that turns the sky into a story without end. The legacy of the unknown was not about what the visitor was. It was about what it left behind. A trail of wonder, a fire of debate, a promise of more. A reminder that humanity stands at the edge of a vast sea, and every ripple, every visitor, every silence is a call to sail further. And so, even as the object itself drifted into endless dark, its presence never faded. It lived in science. It lived in stories. It lived in silence. It became more than an object. It became a symbol that said, the universe is not finished. The story is not over. The unknown is not empty. It is alive, it waits, and it will come again. Thus, the legacy of the unknown was not fear. It was wonder, not despair, but possibility. Not ending, but beginning. The visitor had come and gone, but its legacy remained forever, in minds, in hearts, in stars.